In this video, we're going to be doing waiver wire stashes for week 12. One of my favorite videos to do every single week. I have no FAAB. I've had no FAAB since about the offseason, so I have to pick up guys in the depths of the night, dude. I got to wait till 3 a.m., pick up dudes, be super sneaky about it. So let's talk about some of my favorite waiver wire stashes for this week. We begin with handcuffs like we do almost every single week, guys. And we see at the top of the list, we got Sean Tucker, Blake Corum, Bhayshul Tuten, Keaton Mitchell, Brian Robinson Jr., a bunch of names that we need to be focusing on, we need to be paying attention to. At the top, guys, Sean Tucker, man, it was reported that his workload is going to increase. John Gizzard, the offensive coordinator, said, listen, the man has earned touches. And, Bucky Irving, he's dealing with some mental issues, supposedly. I saw a report from Mike Florio who said, look, man, it's kind of inside information, but there's a chance Bucky Irving is far away from returning. I also saw another report that kind of contradicted that. So I'm not really sure what's going on with Bucky Irving. I'm not going to lie to you guys. But Sean Tucker has been great, dude. And every season, the man's like Jeepers Creepers, dude. He shows up for a game, pops off, and he disappears to slumber for another season, right? So, but if his workload is going to increase, Rachaad White hasn't been very great. He's been very inefficient. Sean Tucker is essentially just an explosive back, dude. Rachaad White is a really good, all-purpose back. He's good at receiving. He's decent between the tackles. But Sean Tucker offers a lot more upside, a lot more explosion. So playing the Rams this week, it's not the best matchup, but, I'm pretty sure everyone was picking this man up for the waiver wire for this week. But if he happens to still be on your waiver wire, make sure you guys pick him up, dude. I wouldn't start him this week against the Rams if you have better options. But a lot of people don't. Like, I'm starting this man. I'm starting him and the next player, which is Bhayshul Tuten. He had his pop-off game. He had his emergence game, essentially. He went 15 for 74 and a touchdown. Looked great. Was busting off 10-yard runs left and right, where before this game, he hadn't had a run over 10 yards yet on the season. He had a bunch against the Chargers. Then he gets injured. It looked like a bad ankle injury. He was writhing in pain on the ground or on the pitch. So I don't know. But this week in practice, he didn't have a non-contact jersey on. He was practicing in a limited fashion, to be fair. But I think the reason that I'm really interested in him is that ETN had a non-contact jersey at practice yesterday with a shoulder injury. This sent Twitter into a spiral, dude. Everyone on Twitter was like, holy shit, it's fucking officially Bhayshul Tuten season. So I'm not really sure if it's going to be Bhayshul Tuten's season, to be honest, but we know what he's capable of. We know the speed. We know the fact that this regime went out and drafted him. So I don't need to harp on him too much. Then we got Keaton Mitchell, guys. So he's earning a larger role for Baltimore. He's looked great every time he's gotten touches, or most weeks that he's gotten touches. And he had the most touches he's had so far. He had 9 total opportunities in week 11. 6 for 31. That's a really good yard per carry clip, and that's against the Browns. And then he gets 3 targets, of which he catches 2 for 23. That's 11 per catch, dude. He's explosive. He's good, but he's playing behind Derrick Henry. So that's the problem, right? If you're super desperate, you can probably pick him up. But the reason I love him, dude, is that they play Cincinnati in week 13. So pick him up ahead of this week. I mean, you could probably start him this week against the Jets as well if you're super desperate in a deep league, right? But next week against Cincinnati, that's a really good one. The Ravens have to win out. Essentially, they need to win all their games. So I think Keaton Mitchell is one of my favorite stashes. And Devin Neal's another one. I highlighted him. It's simply because of the schedule, guys. In the playoffs, fantasy playoffs, week 15 to 17, Carolina, the New York Jets, and Tennessee Titans, man. That's great. Carolina's not the best, but those other two, phenomenal matchups, dude. This is an offense that's actually kind of competent. Tyler Shough is actually surprising me. He's actually a pretty competent player. All right, next let's talk about quarterbacks, guys. We get Tyler Shough against Miami, who is 16th best against quarterbacks. You can see them here. There they are. They allow about 16.9 fantasy points to quarterbacks. They're a lot worse on the season. They've actually played a lot better the last 4 weeks, but I'm looking at last 4 weeks because I want to know who's doing well. At the end of the day, there's just not a lot on a lot of waiver wire. So Tyler Shough is somebody that actually has a decent matchup, right? Then we got Trevor Lawrence at Tennessee, and we see Tennessee up here. They give up 22.45 fantasy points against quarterbacks the last 4 weeks yet again. So that's a matchup we definitely want to attack. And then you guys see Beef Brisket, Jacoby Brissett. They're playing Tampa Bay, who is third worst, man. So they give up 22.5 fantasy points to quarterbacks. So those are 3 quarterbacks where they're probably available. I mean, Beef Brisket, Jacoby Brissett is probably not available at this point. He's been actually really good every single week. But just a general takeaway, man. When you're looking for streaming players or stashes, I like to look at this fantasy points against. I look at the last 4 weeks. Sometimes I look at the last 2 weeks if I know there's been some big defensive players that have come back. And that's how I approach it. I just want to see who's bad against players or against positions, and then I target those positions. It's super intuitive. It's super easy. You guys can do this on your own. All right, next up, wide receivers, man. Luther Burden, yet again, dude. The coaching staff is talking this man up, dude. That's now 2 weeks in a row where they've been talking him up. We saw his snap share go up yet again. He's fully outplayed Olamide Zacchaeus at this point. He didn't do too much, only 4 fantasy points, but Olamide Zaccheaus played like 13% of the snaps, man. Now, I will say this is a game they're winning, right? The slot wide receiver just doesn't see the field very much when your team is winning. Usually you'll have tight ends in the game, you're running the ball, but we love it. We love the fact that Luther Burden has officially earned a role. And we see this report here that Ben Johnson said, you get what you earn. And I think he's earned the increased snaps, Johnson said. So he's going to continue playing, man. And in negative game scripts, which there are going to be plenty of those, I think, moving forward, maybe even this week against Pittsburgh. So I think he's a very, very speculative play this week. But keep in mind, man, Pittsburgh is one of the worst teams against wide receivers on the season. Just the last 4 weeks alone, they are 27th worst, right? So they give up 39.5 fantasy points to wide receivers. There aren't too many teams that are worse than them, right? So even this week, man, if you're looking for like massive upside, if you're looking for somebody that could get like a deep bomb touchdown or like a long yards after the catch touchdown, then Luther Burden might be the guy for you, man. Jayden Reed up next won't return to practice on Wednesday. A little bit sad. We thought he might return this week. He's still a very speculative add to me. He started doing a little bit of individual work last week. Adam, if he's on the waiver wire, add him, throw him in your IR. He's still available in, 59% of leagues, man. So if you have an IR spot, I'd definitely pick up Jayden Reed. There pretty much aren't any other IR stash wide receivers I'd rather have over Reed. I will say, though, he's going to have a lot of mouths to, or a lot of people to compete with for targets, right? Xavier Legette, dude, I can't believe this man is relevant this season, but 16 fantasy points, only played 55% of snaps. Jalen Coker did run more routes than him officially and by a pretty wide margin. So Jalen Coker's been getting ramped up since he came back on IR, but Xavier Legette is producing, dude. 8 targets, 4 for 83 in a touchdown, catches a long bomb touchdown. It's a pass that he would have dropped in seasons past or in season past, right? So he seems to be improving. He's got the straight line speed. He's kind of a one-trick pony. He's just a guy that can run vertical routes. So if this team is struggling to run the ball with Rico and with Chuba and stuff like that, they want to take shots down the field. It's going to be Legette. Terrell McMillan's more of the intermediate guy. He's more closer to the line of scrimmage than Legette. So somebody that's very speculative, but again, if you're looking for high upside, Legette is somebody that is interesting to me. And Adonai Mitchell, pretty much the same exact player, right? No hands, only vertical routes, dude. Him and Legette, I haven't seen those two guys in the same room, so I'm not entirely sure they're not the same person. But this team said they want to see what they have in their youth. And that's why they moved to Tyrod Taylor, because they want to view what they have in, and they listed 3 players. They listed Mason Taylor, Adonai Mitchell, and John Metchie. John Metchie, right? But Adonai Mitchell is somebody who's interesting to me, man. 6 targets, only played 49% of snaps. That was his first game, right? He literally had like a weekend to learn the playbook. 1 for 10. Drops a deep bomb touchdown. I swear, dude. You can't make this shit up, dude. You can't write this. But nevertheless, they want to see what they have in him. He separates maybe better than almost anyone in the NFL. And if you're in any type of league format where you get points for dropped passes or like mental mistakes, Adonai Mitchell's a fucking stud, dude. I started him over Jonathan Taylor, man. So, and then I mentioned John Metchie. Let's talk about him, dude. Let's look at the game log here. We see 82% of snaps, dude. 82% of snaps in his second game. Second game, I believe he came in week 10 and then played only 16%. He goes 3 for 45 and a touchdown. And it's reported here on Sleeper. I don't know who writes these fucking blurbs, but somebody said he could take over as the wide receiver 1 for the Jets. Look, Adonai Mitchell, John Metchie, both garbage. It's the Jets. I understand. I mean, not garbage. That's mean. They're not exciting, right? They're not going to be high volume. They're not going to be like, the Jets aren't going to score a shit ton of points any given week, right? But you never know, dude. With Tyrod Taylor, who's a little bit more of a competent pocket passer than Justin Fields, this is interesting, man. John Metchie, I really do wish I would have picked him up, because I'm pretty excited about the prospect of Tyrod Taylor coming in. And the fact that they play Baltimore, Atlanta, Miami, which is a juicy one. Look, these are players where, like, if you're debating between like Josh Downs, John Metchie, right, Luther Burden, that's when I'd consider these types of players, right? These are stash players. Like, I want to see if they can get more work. If John Metchie played 82% of snaps, I want to see if he can get another 80+% snap share. And I want to see from 3 targets up to like 5 or 6 or 7. Obviously, the more the better, right? But that's kind of why I'm picking these guys up. All right, next up, Chimere Dike, man. Somebody I've really loved. He actually helped me win one of my matchups in, I believe, week 8 when I started him. But Calvin Ridley comes back in week 11, and he only plays 27% of snaps. But that's because he had not only a chest injury, but also a concussion scare. I believe he passed the concussion test, but Calvin Ridley breaks his leg. Breaks his fibula or something. He breaks something in his foot or leg. So he's out. He's done for the season, which is like opens up the runway for Chim Dike yet again. I was concerned that Ridley would come back and kind of steal Chim Dike's job again, even though Chim Dike was great. There was a couple weeks where they actually used him like a real wide receiver. But now it opens things up again. And then Elic Ayomanor as well, another guy we need to talk about alongside Chim Dike. Same exact reason. Calvin Ridley's out, you can pencil this man in for like 5 or 6 targets a game. And you can pencil him in to drop like 3 of them. I don't know what his issue is, man. In college for Stanford, he was amazing. He caught everything that went his way. Big bodied guy, but now he's dropping stuff, and there are good passes coming at him. He's making mistakes, he's not running the right routes. So I think out of the two between Chimere Dike and Ayomanor, I probably lean Chimere Dike for like explosiveness. At the end of the day, you win fantasy football by having like big explosion weeks from players. Like I won a league last year, man, with like literally 3 players. I had like Jayden Daniels, Jamar Chase, and Malik Neighbors. I mean, those are great fucking players to have, don't get me wrong, but the rest of my team was just like bus stop Magoos, blacksmiths, fucking little league baseball coaches, like Home Depot employees. It was the worst team I've ever won with. So Chimere Dike is somebody where out of all these names, who's the guy who can maybe be like that like 30-point explosion game randomly in the playoffs? Chimere Dike maybe fits the bill. Luther Burden as well. Adonai Mitchell, probably not, right? Like there's just not enough pass volume on that team. All right, guys, next we got tight ends. We start with David Njoku at San Francisco, who I looked at the last 4 weeks. They're actually 27th worst against tight ends. They give up 19.5 fantasy points, 4 touchdowns. So they're giving up touchdowns, they're giving up yards, they're giving up receptions. They're struggling against tight ends at the moment, right? So David Njoku and Fannin, for that matter, obviously, are both going to be guys that we can turn to if you're in a pinch, right? There's some other names that are a little bit better. Isaiah Likely is another one. They get Cincinnati. So Cincinnati has been bleeding fantasy points. They're currently 3rd in the last 4 weeks, 3rd worst against tight ends. So 21.17 fantasy points allowed to tight ends. But on the season, they're dead last, right? 21.9 fantasy points. They're the absolute worst. They've improved slightly, or maybe just other teams have been even worse. So Isaiah Likely is someone, I know Mark Andrews is getting all the hype right now. He had that rushing touchdown. But Isaiah Likely is someone where like any given week, he can pop off like a big run, like a yards after the catch run. So Isaiah Likely is somebody who is like, again, dude, this is scraping bottom of the barrel, but then there's Taysom Hill as well. And we see Miami still here at the top of this list. 20.6 fantasy points allowed to tight ends the last 4 weeks. That puts them at 4th worst. And Taysom Hill plays them in week 13. And I wanted to show you guys one more thing, man, because Taysom Hill's a weird player. He's not a real tight end. So I don't know if you can even look at this number. But I'm like, all right, well, let's combine that with running backs, right? And Miami is actually pretty decent against running backs the past 4 weeks. They're actually 6th best, man. You can probably attribute that to like a couple of good games. They played like the Bills, where they really stopped James Cook from doing anything. But on the season, they're bad. They're 23rd worst, 24 fantasy points allowed to running back. So I don't know. I don't know how you approach Taysom Hill. Again, it's like bottom of the barrel. You're probably not going to want to start him ever, right? Because you start him if you start him 5 weeks, he'll be bad for 4 of them, and then he'll go for like 28 fantasy points in that 5th game when you're already out of the playoffs. So I'm not recommending to start him, but if it's absolutely like empty on the waiver wire, maybe you have like a bye week in week 13. I don't even know if there are any bye weeks in week 13, but Taysom Hill is someone that can potentially help us. All right, next up we got Gunnar Helm and Okonkwo. They play against Jacksonville in week 13. Jacksonville the last 4 weeks, dude, they're getting absolutely gashed by tight ends. Absolute worst in the NFL. 25 fantasy points allowed to tight ends the last 4 weeks, 4 touchdowns, a shit ton of targets, a shit ton of yardage. So, Gunnar Helm, he's kind of ascending. And when we look at Gunnar Helm, guys, 64% of snaps, man. 5 targets in the last game, 4 for 29. Look, it's difficult starting any player for the Titans, but, the matchup is just so juicy, it seems, that the Jacksonville Jaguars are really just struggling against the tight ends. And that also puts Okonkwo potentially in play. He's kind of more like the big play guy, the down-the-field threat. So if you're deciding between the two, if you're really just playing the matchup and just saying, hey, Jacksonville's bad, I want to play one of these guys, I probably lean Okonkwo for, again, big plays, explosion. That's how you win in fantasy. But Gunnar Helm, dude, keep an eye out on him, man. As a stash, he's somebody that is interesting, dude. I want to see what happens this week against Seattle. The snap share will probably give us a little bit more information on who we can probably trust more in that week. But, you can probably not pick any of them up and just wait till next week. But you just never know. One of them could have a big week, but I highly doubt it against the Seahawks. That does it for the video, guys. Thank you for being here. I truly, genuinely appreciate you giving me your time. You could have been watching so many other videos. Discord link down below. We're talking ball every day. We're helping each other with sit starts, trade advice, waiver wire, all that cool. Catch you guys in the next video. Peace.